We are going live now. I will let you know once it's going, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that everything mutes. Terry Brown is in the house. Let's just give it another couple seconds. I'm going to make sure that this is muted. And I think we're live. Yay!
Woo! Oh my gosh, welcome everyone to our next webinar. This one is going to be an amazing event. And I just have to just take a moment and say, I can't believe it. April, we are on episode 17.
What?
So we've done 16 before, and this one is no different. This one's going to be an amazing conversation. So you're going to want to buckle your seatbelts, get out something to write with, and pull up a seat, because we're going to be diving in the ASC Accountability Success Circle. We have monthly themes, and this month's theme is all about ownership. And I am so excited that let's just kick it off. You see by the title, wherever you're watching, it's all about how to take ownership and action on your true passions, because there's nothing sadder in this world than having some things that you're passionate about that you want to do, but yet you're not doing it. I think it was like someone like Zig Ziglar says, if you want to find all the best-selling books or Grammy Award winning albums, the first place you can probably go look is a graveyard, because a lot of people take that with them. So I don't want to start this off on a downer. I'm ready to pick this back up. So let me introduce our guest so we can get started. Everyone, give it up for Natalie Siston. Natalie is from the small town of Republic, Ohio, but she's taken her skills from Silicon Valley and various Fortune 100 companies that she's worked with and for, and she took that leadership skills, those leadership abilities, and she mixed it up with her ability to live and thrive in a small town environment. She created a company called Small Town Leadership. She created that in 2016. And the reason why she did that, it allowed her to share these amazing lessons that she got from small town living to help leaders, probably like yourself, create big success in the world. And the other thing that we have to celebrate is that she is an author. Just this last November, her first book, Let Her Out, Reclaim Who You Have Always Been, it was released, and we're going to be diving into that, talking about some of those amazing virtues that are packed into this book. So Natalie, welcome.
Thank you for having me here. I told April I knew this was the episode that I should be on because my lucky number is 17. So it's all working together.
That's amazing. And one of the things that I do also want to say is that Natalie is one of like the core initial people that helped kickstart what is the Accountability Success Circle now. So she is like one of our most highly esteemed members that we absolutely love and adore. And when she first joined the ASC, this was a concept that she had talked about, maybe write a book one day. And she really just was one of those people who really embraced some of the things that we worked on in that initial core group, and she got it done. Look at what can actually happen when you put your mind to stuff and you're surrounded by amazing positive energy. So quick plug, if you haven't joined the ASC and you're watching this on my YouTube page, you should join and come hang out with us. Okay, back to the regularly scheduled program.
Woohoo! So Natalie, I just gave everyone just the high level overview. Take a moment and dive deep. Let our viewers know a little bit more about you and what lights you up, and then we're going to dive into today's material.
Well, what lights me up, one is my children. I've got one belly crawling on the floor here, which I'm not quite sure what's happening. Pardon my interruption here, but Okay, we'll do that. We will make that happen later. Okay, kiddo. So I'm managing children. We're all doing this in our virtual environment, right? You are both
Mhm.
used to this.
Yes.
So I do not live in the small town Republic anymore. That is where I was born and raised. 600 people. After going to April, plug your ears. The Ohio State University for for both of my degrees. Woo! I
Go
have,
Buckeyes.
that's right. I have stayed in Ohio, albeit a brief stint, as Gary mentioned, in Silicon Valley. I worked at Stanford University after college. I worked in alumni relations for the university out at Stanford while my husband worked on his degree. But like true Midwesterners, true Ohioans, we came home and have been here for the last 16 years. And
You live
really,
in Dublin, right?
I live in Dublin, Ohio, suburb of Columbus. That's right. And what I would say about the journey over the past, I'll call it 4 years, because that's when I started working with April as my coach, um, was that it's really a matter of taking these little steps every single day to get to the big thing that we're working toward. And April was excited and waved the book, and you don't have this version, April. You don't have this version that says #1 bestseller.
Oh,
Oh, snap.
snap.
That's because April was an early reader. She got one of the very first copies because she's
Yeah, I
that
got a
special.
signed copy and a little card that I'm like, this is gonna be my bookmark. Look
There
at
you
that.
go.
I've got a signature.
But life is a series of taking actions on a daily basis and also following inspiration. And that's how this book was born, is because I had actually started another book in 2018 and it wasn't the right book. So I didn't follow the energy and I didn't do it. It wasn't a matter of not having the plan and not knowing the steps. I know plenty of people who've written books who could have helped me, but it wasn't the right book. So I set it aside. I put my energy in other things. And then wouldn't you know it, 2020 hits, pandemic, all of these speeches I was supposed to give, these keynotes I was supposed to give on this topic. It was really just a title. I made up a title and got it accepted at presentations. Anyone wants to be a speaker, that's kind of your thing. Go get accepted for the presentation. You can build it afterward. So for me, it was like, I have a great title. I have a great concept. Now I don't have any stages to be on. So why don't we just turn this thing into a book? And from there, it was like a fire was lit and I made it happen in 2020. So here I am with you guys to help you kick off the year with the title ownership. And I think that the tie-in for me is that when April and I were chatting at the end of last year, I said, I just came off a group coaching session with a group I'm a part of, and we all had to determine what our word for the year was going to be, or our phrase, however you want to think about that. And I've done that over the past 2 years. I've had a word for each of the past 2 years, and I was sitting there and I was like, own it. Like, I want to own it, because in 2020, I quit my corporate job to be a self-employed person. At the same time, I started working through my own self-employment with a startup company, and I was finding myself with a very full dance card. And part of me was thinking, like, this is so wrong. There's a pandemic going on. People are struggling. Like, why do you get to do all these things? And it's only gotten better going into 2021. And I had to tell myself, no, Natalie, you need to own it. Like, own the fact that you've got capability, own the fact that you've got creativity, and just step forward into these opportunities, because life is fleeting. Gary started us in the graveyard, but and so I want to step up and touch as many lives as I can. And if that means that I have to balance things differently or prioritize differently this year, I'm going to do it, because I'm going to own that I've been given some opportunities that are really unique and very timely in my life.
And I love that you say that too, because, there's been times in my life where I, reflect on all the things that I'm doing. And, every once in a while I still, encounter struggles and all of that stuff. We all experience that. But when things are going good, even if the world around us is not sharing the same excitement, there's absolutely no reason to minimize your light just to meet other people where they are. We all know, especially as coaches, that negative energy can be draining and carry a lot more weight than the positivity, and the positivity needs to be stronger than ever to overcome the weight that negative energy brings us. And so I love the fact that this was such a great theme word for you. And, we all have our theme words as well from our annual planning session. But in terms of, really taking ownership. This has really shown up in my life to just think about this for at least January, because I have different themes, but just to think about like, what is it that I'm not owning, and how do I feel good about the commitments that I've made and all that. And so we get to share some of that today. So yay. So Gary, where do we want to start this conversation?
Let's start with the thing that, since I happen to be the freaking Debbie Downer, and started us in the graveyard. Let's start with the why. Like, I sort of alluded to why this is important, but why is it important now to start taking ownership? And you know, I would love to hear first, from Natalie, like on what's your thought and stance on that, and if you have any personal stories that you want to sort of throw in there, we're all ears.
Yeah, I think that, for me, so the culmination of Let Her Out, and it's a spoiler alert, but I already kind of told you about it, is the culmination, and I talk about it in the book, that it's really the story of me coming into my own so I could go be on my own, in terms of, in a totally professional context, right? Yes, I talk about personal life, I talk about my love life, I talk about my kids and all that in the book, but really the Let Her Out for me was as much about releasing all these expectations I had for myself as a worker and an employee. And I feel like in terms of the ownership piece, if the last year has shown us anything, it's that a workplace doesn't owe us anything. I have coached so many people who really very, very much want their workplace to give them their fulfillment. They want showing up every day or logging in every day to be the thing that gives them fulfillment. And the minute those people start to realize that, oh my gosh, it's not actually my company that owes me this, it's myself, they start to see a transformation. And I think that's what we all need to do for ourselves, because we can't rely on our place of employment. We can't rely on other people. We have to really find that energy from within. And let me tell you something, when you start to, when like, I describe it like the hands rubbing together, when you really get that friction built out, that fire's burning inside of you, people want a piece of that. Like they want to be in your circle when you're showing up and you're vibing at that energy. And that is what I was feeling last year. And what it culminated in was, midnight writing session. I was on the precipice of quitting the corporate job. And something that came to me was, who quits her job, a good job that I was good at and I liked a lot with great people? Like, who quits that job in the middle of a global pandemic? And the answer that came to me was someone whose dreams are greater than her fears.
I love that.
So it's just like, okay, so 2 words: dreams, fears. Where is your, I'm thinking of the math thing here. Where is your, equal sign, or your greater than or less than when it comes to fear and dreams? And so really, like, if you're writing stuff down, write that: fears, dreams, and where does that stand for you? Because when you get to the moment where those are either equal or your dreams are greater than your fears, is when you can start to take some of this powerful action that we're all meant to do, but we just hold ourselves back from so much. So I think that for me, that the ownership is crucial, because I want everyone's fire to be lit. I don't want to go be with the Debbie Downer at the party. It sucks. We don't want to do that. I want to go be with the person who is totally on fire. And we have to start with ourselves, and then other people around us start to take fire as well.
I love that. I'm like speechless right now.
Right? Oh my gosh.
Like,
that's like a mic drop moment right there.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, am I letting fear win? Like in, some of the things that I'm doing, it's just like, really, like if your dream is so strong, like you won't create it if you let your fears overtake what you truly want. Ah, that was good.
Yeah. And Terry in the chat says that's deep.
Amazing. So
just got...
in addition to fear, that's definitely one of the barriers that prevents us from not being in true ownership of what we truly want, right? What types of other barriers can we identify that can prevent you from being this fully expressed, fully satisfied, person?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a loaded question, April, because an entire section of my book called "Remove the Barriers to Her." So we were
I
actually
know,
looking
because I
back.
was reading through it and I was like, what are the
So
barriers?
we've already covered
Alley-oop.
section. We've already
Alley-oop.
covered section.
We're doing a reading of
4.
Let Her Out right now.
Yeah, section 4 was "Let Her Out," dreams greater than fears. Okay, cliff notes taken. Section 3 is recognize and remove the barriers to her, because that's, and her, let me just back up and say, who is her or him or they or whatever the case might be for you. So her is that person who was 8, 9, 10 years old and the world was her oyster. She was, she would dance on a stage and she would speak her mind and she would do everything she was passionate about. She would not apologize. She would own her dreams. Like, this is the girl who I see, because I'm raising 2 of them right now, and part of me wants them to hold themselves in a little bit more, but I don't say that outside this room. I'm not going to squelch their fears or their dreams. But she's the person who I want to see more of in a boardroom, in on a stage, on a newscast. She's who the world needs to see more of. And the reason we don't see her is because she has erected all of these barriers around her. So in the book, I outline 9 different barriers I have personally faced over my life. And as April said, some of these are going to be constant things that I chip away at day by day. Some bricks build up and you got to like take them back down, and some have gone away completely. But it's that recognition that we each have to do. And I let me just categorize where I put these barriers, and that hopefully will give everybody listening an idea of, okay, how can I start to think about this for myself? So I said there are some true hard external barriers in our life: time, money, capability, resources. So truly, if you right now are the primary caretaker and you can't leave your house and you have little children, like, yes, all day long, I'm going to buy from you that a barrier you have is time and access to do the thing that maybe will light you up. Then there's internal barriers. That is the voice in our head saying, not good enough, or not now, why you, someone's better. And then there's an in-between level too that I call kind of the intermediate barrier, where maybe there's something, this hard barrier at play, but really there's some mind stuff getting in the way. And typically if we can crack through the mind stuff, we can then find a way to break through that external barrier. It's like if the mind thing is saying, oh, I just don't have enough money. It's like, well, no, if that dream is really that strong, your mind will find a way to get you the funds, or find a more inexpensive way to achieve whatever that thing might be. So, in the book, I outline things like imposter syndrome. And for me, my entire life, I had a need for recognition. I was the kid who liked winning awards, a high achieving A+ type student my whole life. And finally, at the age of 35, I realized that was an issue for me. And it smacked me in the face so hard that I had one of the most painful experiences of my professional career that I detail in, it's great in great detail in the book. But that was my wake up call about, okay, Natalie, you don't need recognition all the time. Like, stop it. And kind of the way I like to say it is, we in organizations, so many people are looking up all day long, like, whose butt do I need to kiss? Who do I need to approval? Do I need to gain? When really we need to be looking around and down at us, because that's where people will feel on a daily basis. We can't really figure, you can't manage what's happening above you at all times. So those are the types of barriers I like people to think about. So I'm curious, April and Gary, what for you are those barriers that are in the way of owning something right now?
Gary, you want to go first or you want me to?
I'll go first. I love, first and foremost, just want to acknowledge you, Natalie, about making it so freaking visual, about that person, that little person, that is, you know, that had those wide eyes, big aspirations. A mentor of mine, his name is Harris the Third. He talks about having a wonder switch, and when we're young, by default, the wonder switch is on. But as we get older, that wonder switch gets turned off, and I feel like that is the thing that keeps us from like thriving. Like, we lost our sense of wonder. And for me, I like to say it's those, I should all over myself. Like, I should be doing this because, you're right. It's that identity that we think we're supposed to have because of, for whatever reason, of, oh, you know, uh, according to, all these other things, it's like, oh, I should get a good job because I went to school. I should do all these other things. And as a result, I'm living someone else's life, and that, like, is something that I feel like keeps coming back. Like, it's like a backpack of all of that guilty stuff, and it's just weighing me down of like, well, I'm the oldest and I'm the first to go to college, and according to that, like, my parents said this, it's all that like stuff that is, again, it's just all in my head. And I call it WBNE radios, that's static, and WBNE stands for wrong, bad, never enough. So that's the thing for me personally. That's the saboteur. I call them saboteurs, that is keeping me from like owning it and being my like sort of authentic self. What about you, April?
I agree with all of this, and this is all stuff that I am experiencing on a daily basis that hold me back from really just taking ownership of the life that I have and feeling at peace with it. I think one of the biggest things, like Natalie, this feeling for needing recognition is so high, but I think that it came in the form of, like, how do I compare to others? Am I, not that I want to be better than anybody, but like I want to be in a good place all the time. And so when I would see people who were doing better than me, I looked to them as inspiration, but I also would, make myself feel small if there was something that I, saw that I was really just in admiration around, but then I couldn't do it for myself, or I couldn't recreate that. And I think a lot of that in my, pre, uh, the cheerful mind years was just thinking, how come I can't get that promotion? Why can't I be, one of the influencers in the room, one of the big, like, hard hitting decision makers? Like, I should be up there, but, maybe I'm not good enough. So it's that combination again of the inner critic talking. I think also, with comparison comes, just societal expectations, right? That's kind of what you want to compare to. We look at our world today, and everything on, in media is, this standard that is not the average person. And so I've, over the years become really skeptical of what I see in media, because they want to package it in a way that's going to draw you. And of course it's beautiful, it's inspiring, it's great, but if you let your life, like, you hold your life to that standard, it's just not easy. You're really climbing an uphill battle. And so trying to seek out more authentic, real world situations that are going on, that aren't, this crazy production, like seeing things as they are is super important to me in order to claim myself. And so, I will learn a song on the ukulele and play it within 30 minutes of trying it, and I might make mistakes, and I might be recording and, restarting in the recording of the video that I'm creating for it over and over and over again until I get something that I can stomach and share. But it's the raw authenticity is such a huge thing for me. And then the last thing that I wanted to say was that for somebody who's super driven, sometimes you think more from your head than your heart. And not to say that that's a bad thing, but having that balance between, being rational and leveraging your intuition. If you are one of the extremes the other way, like, that can be a barrier in itself, from really owning it, because then you're getting stuck in the logic and not being able to leverage creativity and all that stuff. But then sometimes if you're too creative, that can also lead you down a path where there's not enough structure to, see something through the end. So you need to find that balance between that. So those are the things that kind of came to mind for me. Any
I think so. It's just interesting the way that, like, all these threads tie together, right? So, Gary, you said the word saboteur, and April, you're using the words, rational brain and emotional brain and heart and head. And so one of the organizations I'm working with very closely, in helping them define their experience, is called Positive Intelligence. And the founder has actually an assessment called the Saboteur Assessment. And, you can go there. It's totally open. Just go take it, and it'll help identify what that voice actually is for you. And I know when I took it a year ago, I was like, oh my goodness, like that. Yes, that kind of explains everything. It can actually, it helps you get to that barrier even quicker because it identifies it for you. And so for me, like my top two that showed up when I took that assessment were called the stickler and the restless. And so the stickler, I daughter T crosser, that A+ student, no, I named her Harriet because Harriet is always keeping me safe and in bounds. And then the restless is this idea of just like, nonstop, like FOMO and moving along before you settle in and that type of thing. And I could feel those things in my life last year. And so doing this work it changes where you shift your brain too, because if you do that work, you bring yourself into your higher executive functioning brain and you're less in your fight or flight brain. And I actually built a talk that I gave. It was a virtual talk in the pandemic called Leading from Your Head and Your Heart. And it was the idea, it was like a riff on, for April and I went to the same coaching school, how do these levels of energy that we've been taught to coach through, how do they line up with this idea of a saboteur and hopefully shifting you into more of a sage place of your brain. And so we're all wired the same yet differently, right? So we all have the same connectivity that starts to send pulses to our brain to different places in our life because of different things that happen to us, the conditioning we have, but we've got the ability to retrain ourselves. And I turned 40 last January. And I think for me, that's you mentally or physically, you want to train differently because your body's going to start to change. But for me, it was a year of just complete mental training of, if we're all going to get through this thing we're going through, man, this brain had better be fit. And the body will follow.
That's amazing.
Nailed it.
Can you tell us again? I'm going to try to search it and then I'll put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat. Already did.
You found it already? Okay, cool. Because now I'm like, what's mine? Because it's really interesting too, because, like Natalie, I think one of the things that really drew us together is this like need to be like the A-type personality, A+ type. I like how you said that. Yeah. Personality. And I definitely feel that over the last few years, I have really let go of that. And now I'm wondering, like, am I still that? Like, how did I navigate that? And so, really just embracing like, okay, I don't need to be, the top of the tippy top of everything, because I almost just don't care about it anymore, which is, I don't know, it's scary, but it's also like my goals are different. So I'm just almost curious to see how, if this assessment would still show up where I probably still have it in me. I'm just like not leveraging it. So we'll see, but I'm excited to.
I've got a strong hunch how yours will go. April, you'll have to send me your results.
Me too.
When I'm done.
Okay. We should take some bets.
Yeah, and I don't know what the different
in a healthy, safe way, Gary. Let's just say
right?
A healthy, safe way. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not labeling anybody here.
No,
right.
It's not.
For all of you watching, we're gonna put the link to this assessment in the chat, and I would love for all of us to take it. We'll send some internet traffic to this website and see what shows up.
Do it, and then you get some personal coaching from my dear friend Shirzad after it. As he'll walk you through those results in an email series that's really, really great. So
amazing.
Yeah.
I had taken it too, and it was something where I loved that it broke them down, because again, anything that you can sort to dive deeper. It gives you a greater sense of like understanding, instead of just thinking it as there's just one type of saboteur. Like it's like, oh, it's almost like if anyone's seen the Pixar movie Inside Out, except instead of like your like sort of these types of feelings, these are these other feelings. And I love, Natalie, how you gave a name to them, because again, if you can name it, then it almost like takes all the sort of air out of it, and then you can like, oh, that's Eugene again. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's Harriet. That's Eugene. He's just trying to help out. And it's again, Liz Gilbert in her book, Big Magic, she talked about that as well, of, just realizing that this is, and it's interesting because from the coaching school that I came from, they stopped saying like self-sabotage, because we like to come from a positive stance of like you're not really trying to sabotage yourself. You're actually trying to keep things a certain way. It's more of like
Protection.
it's a perseverance sort of thing. And if you look at it from that angle of like, oh, you know what, they just want things to stay a certain way, and that's why this behavior is coming out. So it's an amazing thing, and I agree. Everyone should take the assessment. I love like looking at stuff like this anyway. I geek out on that. But anyways, we're talking about a whole bunch of stuff. So I think we need to go on. So since, let's put the building blocks together. We understand why this is important. We started to uncover some of the things that might get in the way. Now I want to pass it back over to Natalie again. What do we do? How can we go from you know, like this sort of belief and thought to like action? Because I really admire like how you just like, again, you got inspired. You talked about having that light that was lit under you. And I know it wasn't perfect. There was probably some challenges along the way, but you started taking those steps. So how can we do that?
So throughout the book, I use this phrase: pause, reflect, and take action. And so so as a professional coach, I've read a lot of the coaching books, and there are some that I will hand to clients because it just makes your coaching engagements so much easier. And I think my book can be that book for many coaches. So putting it out there for you, go pick it up.
Yeah.
Spend the $15. It'll help you with your coaching practice. There you go. But at any rate, commercial over. The way the book is structured, it's like, read a little bit and get some questions, read a little bit, get some questions. And even in the intro, I said, I'm probably breaking every rule of authorship when I say this, but don't binge this book. Like, take it bite by bite so you can actually do the things that I'm asking you to do. Pause, reflect, and take action. So I think that's how this whole thing works, is we have to slow ourselves down. We have to get out of the frenzy. We have to remind ourselves of the why. Why are we doing this in the first place? We have to reflect. And the reflection, it can be a look back to, hey, what's made me successful in the past? How can I do that here? Hey, where did I screw up royally and how can I avoid that? Or even reflecting in terms of like, what could it look like? What could it be? And usually those two steps alone are enough to inform your action. I don't need to give you like 5 things to choose from or ways to do it. It's like those 2 things enough can usually give you enough note to take action. And I actually brought an example. Do you want me to share?
Yes, please. Yes.
I'm going to do my teacher thing today. So I know since this is January, people have probably set resolutions or goals for the year. And I sat down on the morning of January 1st and I made 2 papers, and I love color and writing. So I just made one that's called Big Goals for 2021, Own It. And I've got like my big goals, right? These are my financial goals. These are, I'll read this one for you. Let her out equals a movement. So these are the big things I'm doing. So then what I did with these big goals for 2021 is I made a daily habits list. So I wrote down 7 things that I want to do every day that ladder up to these things. So for example, one of my goals is to make Let Her Out a movement. So I have on my daily list, do one thing to nurture Let Her Out every day. So that may be sending a copy to, a newspaper reporter of my book, or it could be doing something like this, being on a webinar or a podcast, or it could be as simple as, reaching out to somebody who was on the editorial board just to check in with them. It doesn't really have anything to do with the book, but I'm keeping track of these. Like they all are color coordinated. So every day I take a little color marker and I'm like, yep, did that one. Yep, did that one. And I'm not doing it like from a checkbox standpoint. I'm really trying to be cognizant of like not beating myself up if I didn't eat more fruit and vegetables, because that is on my list, because, come on, we should probably be doing that. But it's just a recognition to say, are there certain, like I've learned that on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I totally fall off the like activity and nutrition wagon. But my God, every day I'm going to do these other certain things. So how can I draw parallels? So for those of you who are wondering, like, how can I really get to own it? You got to connect the big things to these little things. And once again, those little things that happen every day are what's going to spark the things that you don't even know that's going to happen. Sitting in this chair this time last year, I would not have told you I would have published a book in 2020. It was not on my list. But because I must have done enough small things every day and it had that moment of inspiration, it happened. So, there you go.
Yeah.
Woo!
And since April is also the one of the queens of getting shit done, because that's like, she is a getting shit done guru. She may not say that all the time, but I can
I
attest.
think I do the politically correct saying "get it done" just so I don't offend, but
Oh,
you know what I mean. You know what I mean.
forgive me. Should I have been like getting done? Like, should I bleep myself? Forgive me, I
No,
didn't
don't
bleep
bleep yourself
myself.
for this, but for all marketing purposes, I know that sometimes swearing can rile people up in a way and connect in a way, but just trying to be respectful of all thoughts and whatever. But you know what it's what I'm thinking. But anyways, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, I feel like this sort of complements and aligns with your method as well. So that's why I'm like,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
I
sort of.
think I think that there is, understanding, where you're going, first and foremost, and where you would like to be, is the only way that you can really craft actions that are going to be in alignment to serve that and to help you get there. We can constantly create these lists of things that we need to do, but have we taken the step back to say, what is it that we really want? And are the things that we're actually doing going to help make us more satisfied in those specific areas in our life that we're working on? If it's if your life is like laundry all day every day, but really what you want to do is like dive into music, and how can you take this task of doing the laundry every day and making some music out of it. And I'm having this like weird like flashback to some video that I saw of, I don't know, Gary, did you watch this with me? I don't, somebody sent me something where they were like, or maybe it was like on a late night show. They were playing like Star Wars theme song or something, some sort of, or Harry Potter or whatever, with the buttons on the laundry machine. And I was like, what?
It was really
So
cool. It was
yeah,
badass.
so I think you know what I'm talking about. So, but
I know
it's
exactly
it's
what you're
one of
talking
those
about.
things too. It's like what are the small tweaks that you can make to your task list that are really going to amp up, your own personal like happiness. And there's so many different ways to do the same thing, right? Like Natalie's process of writing her book was different from the process of me writing my book, and we all do things that are in service to what we're truly passionate about, ideally, right? So but really taking the step back to think about what is it that you truly want, and what am I going to actually have to do to help get me there. If you don't do that, then you're just kind of going through the motions, which is still okay too, but if you are lacking this personal satisfaction and just craving and longing for more fulfillment, you have to take those extra steps, and it's not as hard as it sounds, in my opinion, at least. So
Yeah. And so, perfect segue into what I was going to say is, in the framework that I learned from my play mentor, Gwen Gordon, she has this thing called the seven paths to play. And these are the sort of building blocks that allow you to bring more of a playful mindset into everything that you do so that you can reap the benefits of play. This is not a play sort of situation, so I'm going to leave that out. If you've been following me and you know my work, you know what they are. But since we're talking about getting it done, uh, that is all about what Gwen calls play on purpose, and it ties perfectly into what April said of there's going to be some things that are going to be challenging that maybe Margaret, is that her name or is it Harriet?
Harriet.
Harriet. All right, cool. Because it's like that's my aunt's name, and I got to confuse him with my other aunt's name, who's Margaret. So Harriet, or whatever the name for your saboteur is, starts to pop out, and I feel like as a way to like neutralize it, when you add that bit of play, you make it more enjoyable. A wise woman once said, "How did it go? For every job that must be done, you add a bit of fun and snap, the job's a game." I think that was how it went. But basically, how can you make this a quest? And I'm all about like games and whatnot. So I for the big thing that I'm tackling for 2021, it's like I am climbing up a mountain. So I'm like on this quest, and there's just something about making it a quest makes it that much more enjoyable. And when you are on a quest and you reach a challenge that is, a call for your sort of creativity to overcome it, rather than if it's just seen like real life is like, oh, this hurts. But if you're playing a game, and in the game, if you run into a challenge, you don't just like throw your hands in the air and give up. You actually go head first. So that's my sort of 2 cents on how to actually get started and get done.
Love that. Now, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I brought up, because I feel like this is something that in, the work that I've done with others, seems to come up, when we're talking about ownership. I think this is where the fears don't exceed the dreams, or the fears exceed the dreams. I'm sorry. And some of this comes up, but, a lot of people who are trying to make these life transitions, and Natalie, you talked about, basically shifting from, a corporate job to working completely for yourself. And that can definitely be scary for a lot of people because of the financial stability that, a full-time job can provide and all the benefits. Whereas, working as an entrepreneur has its, it has its adventures when it comes to, kind of understanding the lay of the land, and you having to create the rules, which can be a blessing and maybe sometimes a curse, because you have to create your own structure. I think that there's a lot of people that, get stuck between this idea of like passion and practicality, where, they want their job to be the be all end all thing that, lights them up and makes it, but then, with whatever fears of, feeling like they can't make it happen because of whatever reasons, or, the barriers that we experience, there could be this line where, when do you, like, I don't know, how do you balance, your passions with maybe something like, what if your passions are something that maybe isn't as easily monetizable, but it's really what lights you up? Like, what do you do in those scenarios, and how do you navigate? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in this, like, well, I guess I'm gonna just work this job because, like, I'll have the money, but now I just don't have the time to do the things that I really want to do. So the barrier there might be the resources, or the time and money. So what do you say to those people, and how do you kind of balance that thin line between passion and practicality?
Yeah, I love that question, because I also have been telling a lot of people on my journey is that this stuff didn't happen overnight. I started my business in 2016. So I was in business for 4 full years before going out on my own. And even with that, like, I had some really solid things lined up to help with kind of the financial piece of it, just the stability piece of it. One of the people I met with on this journey was my financial advisor. I sat down with him and said, what does this need to look like if I'm going to do it smart? And he and I set a goal together, and he said, okay, if you have this much in the bank, you should feel comfortable that even if you make $0 in your first year of business, like, you'll be okay. And for me, that was the formula I needed. Other people are willing to take more of a risk, and I'm not that person, April. So you're asking the perfect person this question. So the path, but so, if you think about my path, there was 4 years, 4 years in that path. Sorry, this is like my little kids' friends, trying to get them on all my devices. It's crazy. Pardon the interruption. Yeah.
No problem.
It's all good. It's all good.
We're being real here.
We
right?
are.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to shut it off on my computer. It's so
We're in
annoying.
a global pandemic. It's
Quality production.
I know. Woo, this is real life. It's not scripted. So, but thinking about me and the 4 years to get there, there were many days where those things were beating against each other. Like, I'm so passionate about this. Why won't they let me do this at my job? And I finally found a job that allowed me to do everything I loved. I feel like I was very, very lucky because I found a corporate coaching job, and those aren't those are very, very few and far between. And I found one at the organization I was already working in. So for me, I felt very, very lucky and fortunate because it paved this path really well. But for people whose things are so far off, that's where I say, if you come into work and maybe like you love doing more analytical things and they're having you do all the creative things. All right, have a conversation and figure out how can you flip flop that. That's a pretty easy shift. In a lot of cases, it's very easy to easy to say, hey, give me the analytical stuff, you take the creative stuff. But if you come into work and you're like, all I ever want to do is teach yoga, and my job is to be a statistical analyst or whatever, it's like, okay, your job is not going to allow you to do that. So find a way to have yoga serve you outside of this day job if this is really what you want. And it's like, and every day you've got to take those walks closer to each other to say, if I really want to follow this yoga passion, then okay, I'm going to have to put some resource to it. I'm going to find a mentor. And I know you guys have a great mentor in Becca who has done that very thing in her life. But for a lot of people, that's not the path they're going to go on. So it's coming to this realization of, okay, when I show up and I turn on my computer today, I'm not going to hold a grudge against it because I'm not doing yoga all day. Because if that's truly what I want to be doing all day, then I need to find a different path to get there. But it's feeling enlightenment and fulfillment to say, oh my gosh, I feel so very fortunate to be able to sit down and do this job because it allows me to practice as much yoga as I want, to go on these wonderful yoga retreats 3 times a year, to have met all these wonderful people in this supportive community. It's really thanking the vehicle that's allowing you to get to that versus really just, saying, no, I hate this job. I hate where I am. And I just want to be somewhere else. We've got to appreciate where we are, or nothing's going to work like we want it to.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, and I think it's really good coming from somebody who made that shift to, when Gary and I were talking about this question, I think a lot of times when I'm navigating this transition with people as they're contemplating, I try to be very clear about like, there's pros and cons to either side, and none of them is wrong. It's, you just have to find what's right for you. And, for me, I've always been very open to saying that, I've been running my own business for 6 years now, 6 years. And, it doesn't make the money that I used to make in my previous job as an employee, from elsewhere. But I also have to think about my life situation and what my priorities are right now. And, I think that I could down the road go back into working for somebody else, but my priorities are, making sure that my kids are successful in school. And, if that means that as long as we're financially stable and trying to figure out ways to make sure that that is solid, despite like not having that full income, and I can still do what I want, then that's great. And when I'm, hopefully down the road, when I'm not needed as much, I can go back to creating, aligning with somebody else's structure. But right now I need my structure. So I think it's really taking some time to figure out what works best for you. And being okay with not, having something that maybe might not even look like, what society expects. Cause I think even early on in the days of, starting entrepreneurship, I was like, I need to make up the money that I was making before. And that was really, really stressful. And I had to spend a couple years trying to release that. And, once I was able to, the money was still coming in, but there was not that pressure there, and I'm doing okay. So, I'm doing the things that I want to do, which is great. And so, just thinking about, what do you need? And if you do need that income to live and, get through life, then of course make sure you put those things in place so that but also figure out time how to, figure out time on how to craft, the time for the passion. And even if it's not something that, you're monetizing, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still have fun with it. So.
Yeah, and I think I just put something in the chat that it's my favorite diagram. It's this idea of, finding the thing you love to do. It's got, vocation, mission, passion. It's four different, it's a Venn diagram. So you guys can link that up for people, but that's all oftentimes very helpful. And here's the thing I would say too. So I worked in big organizations for 20 years, and I loved working at big organizations. I was very good at it. And I don't want to live in a world where everyone wants to be self-employed sitting on a beach. Like, we need companies to be run by really great, amazing people who love their life and love what they do. We don't need people who are just like happily like standing things up all over the place. Like, no, if you have something to give to that company, go do it within that structure and enjoy your life and do all these things you enjoy. So I find myself often almost talking people out of the self-employment or entrepreneurship route, because it's like, why do you really want to leave? And that's where you have to get to that question of, what are you leaving? Are you leaving something, or are you moving towards something? And in my case, I was definitely moving towards something. I wasn't leaving something. But for people who are so desperate to leave, that's the most dangerous place and time to do that, because you might find the towards you're going to be equally as miserable.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, this is amazing. Is there any other, Gary, do we have any other thoughts on that, or so did we talk about everything that we wanted to talk about on that topic?
We did. And
yeah.
I love, Natalie, how you just, sort of described that. And we did put the link to that post in the chat. I know Terry's going to eat that up, and we'll put it into the chat for those of you who are watching the replay in the chat in Mighty Networks in that event. So you have all of these amazing resources as well.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, I know that we're starting to get ready to wrap things up, and this has been such an amazing conversation about how to really claim what you want and, integrate more passion into your life and just take ownership of who you are and being completely self-expressed. One of the things that we like to do at the end is just kind of, if people are fast forwarding through this and need like the golden nuggets, the tiny little synopsis of what to take away from here. And if you are watching right now and are having an aha moment or had an aha moment in the last 52 minutes, feel free to share what was the big takeaway for you. But if people were going to watch just the last 8 minutes of this thing, what is the lasting memory and lasting takeaway that you want to make sure that they take with them after watching this? I don't know who wants to start.
Yeah, this is what we like to call the STAR moment. And STAR is an acronym which stands for something they will always remember. And the thing that I want to call out that I definitely will remember that Natalie was talking about, and she mentions it in her post about how to find your vocation, do work, love that makes a difference. Thinking about what are you being pulled towards? That's like the main thing of and that requires you just sort of take a moment to just pause and reflect and give some thinking, because I feel like we're all so busy and we're running and going and going and going, and taking a moment. I know with all that's going on, it may be challenging, but taking a moment and like really just sort of tap in to your curiosity and what are you being pulled towards? So that's like my thing. And how can you do one thing that's going to lead you towards that?
I love that. It's interesting because just to take that question and be like, what am I running towards? So Natalie showed her theme, obviously, of Own It. My themes for this year, if I can pull this off my wall really quick, and I've shared this a couple times, but these are my themes that everybody, like, just on my little, or my big post-it note of like focus, stability, and intentional ease. Like, that's what I'm running toward this year. And I think a lot of my discovery for this year will be, what processes do I need to put in place and what do I just need to throw away because it's just causing more like chaos in my life. Like, I more than ever am trying to identify how to keep it simple. And so thank you, Gary, for that. But one of the things that I want to make sure that we take away, and I'm just totally stealing this from Natalie because it's still mind blowing, is, really thinking about when are your fears exceeding your dreams, and that's what's keeping you from owning it. Like, mind blown. Like, I have to think about that a little bit because, I feel like me as individually, I really feel like I'm not as afraid as I used to be because I've been doing all this personal work. But what am I doing, even in just the small granular things every day, that is holding me back because I'm afraid of something? And I forget because I get stuck in doing and just going through the motions. So that would be my takeaway for you guys to think about. Take that big, grandiose, like mic drop statement and look at it at a granular level in your life and just say, like, where am I letting fear win? Because that's why you're not owning it. And if you are watching this because you're like, yes, I want that, like, look at where your fears are in control and figure out how to switch that around. So, Natalie, let's have you.
I'll bring it home. Yeah, I think I'll bring us back to like the title of my book and even the subtitle, because we didn't talk much about that, but it's Let Her Out, Reclaim Who You Have Always Been. Right?
Dun,
like
dun, dun.
we are love, we are complete. We have just broken ourselves over time. And I think when we decide to own it, and I'm even thinking about this from a context of a pandemic, it's not ironic, but ironic that I wrote a book called Let Her Out during the middle of a global pandemic, because I hope in a matter of months that we will be able to be let out. And wouldn't it be great if you, along with being able to just go and live a more normal life, or at least do some of the things you used to enjoy more freely, what if you also were let out from more of a spiritual and holistic place to say, I'm back to that person I've always been, and I love her and I honor her, and I'm not ever going to put her back in the corner, in the back of the room. I'm not going to have her hide anymore. And so I'll leave everyone just with that visual of what does the world look like when not only you are let out, but everybody around you has decided that they're ready to be let out too.
Yeah.
Nobody puts baby in the corner.
That's right.
I love it. Oh, well, Natalie, this was amazing. We're so happy that you were able to come on with us today, and we're so excited to just share how amazing you are. For those of you who are in the ASC, Natalie is obviously one of our wonderful members, so feel free to message her and connect with her if anything that she said spoke to you. And if you're not in the ASC and you want more access to Natalie, you should just join the ASC so that you can be in our fun little play space of getting things done and just really like taking ownership of everything that we are and who you want to be. And so, Natalie, thank you so much for being here. And again, last time, you can go get her book that just came out. It's on Amazon, right? You've got ebook.
Yep, it's on it. Yep.
So buy it. Support our fellow ASC members. And you said that you were going to have merch sometime soon too.
I'll have merch at letherout.com soonish. So Yay. Hopefully within the month of February.
And yes. People can find you through smalltownleadership.com too, right?
Yeah, Smalltown Leadership, and just my name, Natalie Siston. I'm the only one.
Yay!
Yay.
The only one.
So yes, obviously, if you are watching this, thank you so much, whether it was live or on the replay. To find out more about the Accountability Success Circle, it's accountabilitysuccesscircle.com. Come hang out with us, and we will see you in our next installment, number 18, of the ASC webinar series. So thanks for coming. Bye, guys. And we